My father-in-law snatched the architectural model from my hands, slamming it onto the polished floor. "This is a joke, not a legacy," he roared at the gala. I bent down, picking up the miraculously intact model as a wave of red wine, meant for it, drenched his pristine white shirt instead. His wife, my mother-in-law Margaret, gasped, the glass still in her hand. "My name is Ethan Hayes, I'm 35, and I'm an architect. Not just any architect, but a partner at a boutique firm in Chicago known for sustainable, human-centric design. To me, buildings are more than structures, they are living systems. To my in-laws, particularly my father-in-law, Richard Reed, I was just a glorified draftsman. He was a real estate developer, a man who saw success in square footage and profit margins, not aesthetic principles or environmental impact. He viewed my profession as a flimsy, artistic indulgence. That gala, a charity event he was hosting, was supposed to be a showcase for his latest project. I had designed a small, elegant pavilion for the entrance, pro bono. His tantrum wasn't just about my model, it was a public declaration of his contempt. I had long sensed their hostility, a current of disdain running beneath every forced smile and polite inquiry. There were the little things, like Richard referring to my award-winning designs as cute little sketches, or Margaret, during family dinners, steering any conversation about my work toward the financial instability of the arts. They even set up an accidental meeting for my wife Clara with the son of a concrete magnate, a man they deemed a more solid foundation. For the gala, their preparation was meticulous. Margaret had repeatedly asked about the exact moment I'd be presenting the model to a potential donor, her eyes gleaming with an unnerving focus. Richard had loudly joked with guests that they should see the pretty model before someone breaks it. It was all a pre-planned stage for my humiliation. Clara and I met 5 years ago at a lecture on urban planning. I was the guest speaker, and she was in the audience, a landscape designer with a fiery passion for public green spaces. We connected instantly, our minds a perfect overlap of structure and nature. Our courtship was a whirlwind of late-night design sessions, exploring abandoned buildings, and dreaming up a world we could build together. Marrying her felt like finding the keystone to my life's arch. Our first few years were a bubble of shared creation and deep love, a home built on mutual respect and shared dreams. Her parents, Richard and Margaret, never pierced that bubble directly, but they were always circling, casting long, judgmental shadows. Our backgrounds were a study in contrasts. I came from a family of academics and engineers, people who valued precision, intellect, and quiet contribution. The Reeds were loud, ostentatious, and believed wealth was the ultimate measure of a man. They lived in a sprawling mansion that I privately considered an architectural travesty. All mismatched columns and wasted space. Clara, their daughter, was different. She had their drive, but my family's soul. We lived in a restored brick townhouse in Lincoln Park, a space we'd meticulously renovated ourselves. Every line and material reflected our shared values. My studio, with its north-facing windows and models of ongoing projects, was the heart of our home, a testament to the life I was building, a life Richard and Margaret fundamentally disapproved of. Their interference began subtly, then escalated. First, it was constant, unsolicited financial advice. Then, they'd forget to invite me to business-related family events, later telling Clara I would have been bored anyway. I recall 3 specific incidents that laid the groundwork for the gala explosion. Once, they took Clara on a week-long European vacation, booking my flight for the wrong dates, by mistake, forcing me to miss it. Another time, Margaret told a group of their friends that I was struggling a bit, planting seeds of doubt about my firm's stability right when we were trying to secure a major loan. The worst was when Richard offered me a job, a project manager role in his company, to give you a real, stable salary for Clara's sake. It wasn't an offer, it was an attempt to absorb me, to neuter my independence. The gala incident was just the final, load-bearing wall they tried to smash down. That night, after the wine-stained fiasco and their hasty retreat, I didn't feel anger. I felt the cold, clear focus of an architect examining a structural failure. Their attack had been clumsy, an act of brute force. My counterattack would be a design of elegant, devastating precision. The next day, I contacted the venue's security manager. Citing my firm's liability for the pavilion, I requested footage of the entrance area, claiming I needed to analyze traffic flow and engagement with the installation. It was a plausible, professional request. They sent me the files without question. The evidence was clearer than a blueprint. It showed Margaret waiting, wine glass in hand. It showed Richard giving her a slight nod. It showed her taking 2 deliberate steps toward me and feigning a stumble, just as Richard began his loud pronouncements. It wasn't an accident, it was a coordinated maneuver. This was my first key piece of evidence, digital proof of intent. Next, I did a quiet search on Richard's company, cross-referencing public records with a contractor database I had access to. I found a string of lawsuits from smaller firms, plumbers, electricians, landscapers, all claiming Richard Reed Development had refused payment on flimsy pretexts after a project was complete. This was his pattern: use people, then discard them. That was the second piece: financial malfeasance. Finally, I thought about the words he used. Not a legacy. It triggered a memory of Clara mentioning her father was trying to secure a legacy project downtown. A quick search of city planning proposals gave me my third piece. Richard was bidding for the same lucrative public library contract my firm was also a finalist for. His attack wasn't just personal, it was professional sabotage. I knew I couldn't carry this load alone. I needed an ally from within their structure. I thought of Clara's younger sister, Sarah. She was an artist, always treated as the family's eccentric footnote. I invited her for coffee, away from prying eyes. I didn't show her the video. Instead, I simply described what happened. "I'm not surprised," she said, her voice laced with years of frustration. "They did the same to my ex-boyfriend, the musician. Dad called him a penniless distraction and bribed the landlord to evict him." Her story was the missing context, a testament to their long-standing pattern of control. Then she provided the keystone. "Dad's been terrified of your library proposal," she confessed. "He heard a board member at the gala praising your design's vision and integrity. I think he snapped." Sarah's testimony was crucial. It wasn't just evidence, it was motive. It gave the attack a raw, desperate dimension. With Sarah's information, I focused my efforts. The library project was the key. I called a friend, a civil engineer who worked for the city. I asked him to discreetly look into the competing bids. He called back a few days later, his voice low. "Ethan, be careful. Richard Reed's bid includes geological survey data that looks familiar." He sent me the file. My blood ran cold. The seismic data and soil analysis in Richard's proposal were nearly identical to a preliminary report my firm had commissioned and paid for, a report that had been stored on our secure cloud server. The only way he could have it was through a data breach. This was the core evidence. Not just a clumsy public stunt, but a calculated act of corporate espionage. The crime was no longer just social, it was federal. I felt a surge of cold fury, but also a profound sadness for Clara. The foundation of her family was built on deceit. The anger of the first few days gave way to a strategic calm. My first instinct was to go public, to call the police and my lawyers. But that would destroy Clara's family, a consequence I wasn't willing to impose. My goal wasn't demolition, it was reconstruction. I needed to expose the truth within the family, sever their control, and build a new, stronger structure with Clara. The plan formed in my mind like a three-dimensional model. It had phases, contingencies, and a clear, final objective: total surrender on my terms. Before any action, I had to ensure my primary structure, my marriage, was sound. I sat Clara down in our living room, the one we designed together. I didn't start with the accusations or the video. I started with a question. "Do you remember what your father did to Sarah's boyfriend?" She frowned. "That was awful." He said it was for her own good. I nodded. "Has he ever tried to do something like that to us? For your own good?" Her initial reaction was defensive. "My father is difficult, but he wouldn't." She trailed off as the memories surfaced: the accidental vacation sabotage, the job offer, the constant dismissals. I then told her about Sarah's warning regarding the library project. Her face paled. I saw the conflict in her eyes, a lifetime of loyalty warring with the encroaching truth. "What are you saying, Ethan?" she whispered. "I'm saying I have proof," I said gently. "But I won't show you unless you ask to see it. This is your family. It has to be your choice." She was silent for a long time. Finally, she looked at me, her eyes clear and resolute. "Show me." I compiled my evidence into a single, cohesive presentation, a damning blueprint of their actions. The first layer was the gala incident: multiple security camera angles, times stamped, showing the collusion between Margaret and Richard. The second layer was Richard's history, sworn affidavits from 3 contractors he'd cheated, provided by my legal team after some initial calls. The third and final layer was the core evidence, a side-by-side comparison of our proprietary geological survey and the one he'd submitted in his proposal, highlighting the identical data points. To make it irrefutable, I included a report from a cybersecurity expert I'd hired, tracing a breach of our server back to an IP address registered to Richard Reed Development. The evidence chain was airtight. The plan was to present it not as an attack, but as an architectural, structural analysis of the family's foundational flaws. This investigation unearthed more than I bargained for. Sarah, emboldened, shared old family emails. They revealed how Margaret and Richard had systematically isolated Clara from college friends they deemed lacking ambition. They had intercepted letters and created misunderstandings that led to a painful breakup with her first love, a promising young doctor they felt had no significant family name. Their motive was horrifyingly simple: a pathological need to control every brick of their daughter's life. ensuring she remained an extension of their own dynastic ambitions. It wasn't just about me. I was just the latest variable they couldn't control. With Clara now my determined partner, we scheduled the confrontation. We invited Richard, Margaret, and Sarah to our home for dinner. The text from Clara was simple. We need to discuss the family's future. The atmosphere was tense from the moment they arrived. Richard and Margaret were on the offensive, their smiles tight, their posture rigid. They thought they were here to lecture us about the gala incident. They started immediately after sitting down. Ethan, we were deeply embarrassed by your behavior at the gala, Richard began, attempting to seize control. And frankly, Clara, we're worried he's a negative influence. Margaret chimed in, a man's instability can drag a good woman down. I didn't say a word. I let them empty their chambers. Then, I calmly picked up a remote. I agree we should talk about stability, I said, my voice even. As an architect, I'm always concerned with structural integrity. Let's review the blueprints of that evening. On the large screen behind them, the security footage began to play. We watched in silence as the scene unfolded, the nod, the deliberate walk, the fake stumble, the perfectly aimed whine. Margaret's face went chalk white. Richard stared speechless, his usual bluster deflating like a punctured tire. That footage can be faked. He finally croaked, a pathetic attempt at a lie. I clicked the remote. The next slide showed the sworn statements from the cheated contractors. His jaw tightened. Business disputes, he muttered. Then came the final presentation. The side-by-side comparison of the geological surveys. The cybersecurity experts report on the screen, with Richard Reed Development highlighted as the source of the breach. Sarah stood up. And I told Ethan you admitted being scared of his proposal, Dad. That was the moment the entire structure of their authority collapsed. It was a complete and total systems failure. The lies, the manipulation, the sheer arrogance, all exposed in the quiet of our living room. Clara was the one who delivered the final verdict. It's over, she said, her voice shaking but firm. The control, the manipulation, all of it. This isn't a family, it's a hostile takeover, and it ends tonight. Richard and Margaret just sat there broken and exposed, in the ruins of their own making. The investigation had revealed everything. Their decades-long campaign to control their daughters, the malicious sabotage of my career, the criminal theft of my intellectual property. The motive was clear: to force Clara back under their control, married to someone they could mold, ensuring their dynasty continued on their terms. As they sat in stunned silence, I articulated the summary of damages, not in dollars, but in trust, love, and a daughter's stolen autonomy. There were no apologies. Instead, we imposed consequences. This is our family's new building code, Clara stated. All communication would go through her. They were not to contact me directly. No more unsolicited advice. No more interference in our professional or personal lives. A formal, legally binding retraction of their library bid would be filed in the morning, along with a significant, non-disclosed settlement to my firm for the data theft, or I would proceed with criminal charges. There was no negotiation. In the weeks that followed, Clara and I worked as a team, reinforcing these new boundaries. When Margaret called crying, trying to emotionally manipulate Clara, Clara calmly repeated the rules and hung up. When Richard sent a passive-aggressive email about forgiveness, I deleted it without reply. We were a united front, and for the first time, our home felt truly impenetrable. It was a space defined entirely by us. Our marriage, having withstood a force majeure event, was now stronger than ever. The secrets and unspoken tensions were gone, replaced by a raw, profound honesty. We spent our evenings not navigating family politics, but designing an extension for our own house. A new studio for me, a greenhouse for her. We were drawing our own blueprint for the future, a future free from their toxic influence. 3 months later, I received a call. It was the chairman of the city library board. Mr. Hayes, he said, Richard Reed not only withdrew his bid, but he also gave your firm an unconditional, glowing recommendation, citing your unmatched structural and ethical integrity. The board was unanimous. The project is yours. This was his surrender. It wasn't an apology, but it was something better. A public acknowledgement of my professional superiority, forced by the corner I had backed him into. It was the confirmation of a quiet victory. The storm passed. My soul felt a new kind of calm, a stillness born from having protected what I loved. I realized the battle had never really been about architecture or money. It was about the right to design your own life. The Reeds remained in our lives, but as distant, chastened figures. They followed the rules. Looking back, I saw the beautiful irony. They tried to tear down my world, but they only exposed the weakness of their own foundation. True strength, like a well-designed building, isn't about being imposing or ornate. It's about having a solid, honest foundation and the integrity to withstand any storm. And beside Clara, I knew we had built something that would last forever.